Hey guys, welcome to Coding After 30. Having some coffee, well, almost done with it. It doesn't look pretty, but it tastes good. In today's video, we're going to work on more React. And before we continue, I just want to say that I want to do more of the semi-live, or actually live, or the screencast type of videos where I cover basic topics of React. So if you're a beginner or just starting out, this will be perfect for you. And eventually I'll make more complex things as you guys get more familiar with React. By the way, also in the comments, ask me some questions that you have and I could discuss it in my next screencast. I also want to do live. The only issue I have with live is that my internet speed is not as fast as it should be, so it's going to be really interesting to stream. We'll give it a try. It might not be the best quality, but that's okay. But in today's video, we're going to talk about creating a custom hook using fetch, which will allow you to reuse it in multiple components and will allow you to fetch data using JavaScript's fetch API. And before we start, I really want to engage the community. So I really hope that when I do these live, it's going to work. But even if it's not live, the basic idea here, we want to have fun. We want to chat with each other. So if it's not live, you could always chat and talk to me in the comments. I read all my comments. I respond to all my comments. But the idea is I want to make sure that we have fun. So I created a thing called Coffee, Code, and Chat. And most of the time, I want to do this live. But right now, we're just going to start slow, easing our way into it. But with that being said, let's jump to our code here and see what's up. So I'm going to go here. By the way, when I started learning React, I didn't just magically, was like, oh, I know all of React. I actually learned it from somewhere. I took courses, I took classes, and a lot of my knowledge comes from the courses I took. So this is a great course that I took a while ago. You could say I bought it in 2019. It is by David Joseph Katz, and he covers basic React hooks. He talks about how they work underneath the hood. Pretty good class. I don't know why he only has 4.1 reviews, but I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. I learned a lot. Again, when you buy courses on Udemy, the purpose here is not to spend $100. Make sure you wait till the course is on sale, and that way, if you have 40 bucks, you could buy 3 to 4 courses depending on the price and sale, and that's more than enough to learn the basics. If you take one course in HTML, CSS, like I mentioned before, if you take JavaScript, if you take React, that's 3 courses. Man, you're on fire. Just practice and build. And there's plenty of stuff on YouTube to get you going. Now, I'm not against buying courses. I think you should support the creators. That's why I have more courses than I took, because I think they deserve of the hard work that it took. So the reason why I wanted to plug his course in is because I didn't just make up React. I learned it from somewhere. So I wanted to give credit where it's due. And we're also going to use the link that this guy created in our Fetch API to get data from the latest Hacker News article. So with that being said, we're going to jump in. Now, another thing here that I want to show you, I have this app. It's kind of busted right now. I don't have time to continue to work on it. But this is an app I'm working on. This is on like number 3 on my list of to-dos. I have another app that I'm working on, and because I'm working with other people, I have to be more like involved with that one. So this is kind of on the back burner, so it has issues, but I created this area link. So when you go here, you're gonna see a bunch of links, and this is of like articles that I found useful and stuff that I want to remember. So if I forget, I could kind of come back here and check it out. So one of the articles that I'm basing this tutorial on is using fetch with async await, and it's an amazing article. And in this article, this guy, actually, if you subscribe to his email list, you'll get articles he writes. He actually writes some good stuff. So Dimitri here wrote an article on how to use fetch and async. And what's cool about this article, it's in vanilla JavaScript. It's not React. So the additional benefit you guys getting how to use using fetch in React with async await. And what's cool about this, a lot of examples that I saw, they do like the very basic level example. And one thing that most of them don't do is they don't do this cancel fetch request with a board controller. Now, this is something I ran into at work. We had issues, and this is something we used to solve the issue we had. Basically, if the component unmounts, and don't worry if you don't understand it, it's going to cause an error. So what we want to do is when we write our use effect, and I'll talk about it more as we write, we want to make sure we set up a cleaning function. And basically what we want to do is we want to clean on when component unmounts, we want to basically cancel the controller with abort controller. And we talk about it in a second. Again, this video is not to teach you everything about everything. You have Google, you should Google, and this is one of the cool things you should Google. You could always get the link to this article from coreshare.io. It's up, it's buggy, so if it breaks, just refresh your browser a bunch of times, so it'll be fine. And back to our React app, this is where we're going to work. So let me turn to this computer so I could see more. Let me put our VS Code here. So, okay, so currently what we have here, and again, if you haven't set up a basic project, I have other videos that show how to do it, but in general, you should be familiar with VS Code. You should have an instance of a React project. What I did here, all I did is I created a folder called hooks, and inside that folder, I created another folder called use fetch hooks, because as we make more hooks, we're going to add them here because I want to keep going with these live streams and help you learn more about React. And I just created an index.js file, and this is where all the magic is going to come in. Now, because the beauty of custom hooks is that they allow you to use useState, useEffect, which are React built-in hooks. And to get access to them, we have to import them. So we're going to import useState, and I already know we're going to use effect. And we get them from React. Okay, perfect. And now we're going to start with our custom hook function. Because I called the folder useFetchHook, we're going to call it useFetchHook. And the most important part here, because this is a custom hook and not a React component, we want to start the name with use and use lowercase lettering. Very important. And this is what allows us to use useState and useEffect inside a custom hook. I know we're going to have state here initially. So what state do we have? So first we're going to have, obviously we're going to have a result, what we get. So we're going to have result, and normally it's like getter and setter. So we call set result. You could name it whatever you want, but this is what they normally do in React, and we don't need this extra space here. Let's save the space, make more room, and we're going to use state, and our initial state is going to be null. Okay. Next, we're going to have, we might have errors, and we'll do some very simple error handling, but we're going to have errors, or we could hold it error. That's what we're going to return, and we're going to do set error. And again, we're going to use useState. And this is also going to be null. And then the last one, because when we make the fetch request, it's not synchronous, right? There's going to be some time that goes by. So what we want to do is have some sort of is loading flag. So if it's still loading the data, we want to make sure we don't show it. And we're going to call it set is loading. The thing of doing this live is that you guys all see how badly I type and the mistakes I make. And that's the beauty of it, because sometimes when you watch edited content, and this is going to be false, is that people don't make mistakes and you get the wrong idea about programming. Programming is about suffering. It's about making mistakes. That's just the way it is. And just so we could get into using this hook right away, we're going to right away return, and we're going to return it as an array. I know some people return it as an object, but I'm going to stick to this same logic, right? This is a useState hook. They return an array, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to have our useFetch hook, and we're going to return an array with results or result. and error, and is loading. Okay, so now what we want to do, we want to export this. So we're going to export. And when you just put export in front of const, this is going to be a named export. Let me make the screen bigger here. So let's go to our app. This is what we're going to do. So I already imported use fetch hook from hook fetch hook. So now we have access to it. And I already wrote the things that we want, except it's result, error, and is loading. And what I did is I console logged everything here so you guys could see it, right? So let me save everything here. Again, I did that kind of ahead of time to save some time, but I will wait for you to type this out. And you could also type in your console logs. And so now let me switch back to our browser here. And if you look in our browser, we notice here we have null, null, false. Where is that coming from? Where that's coming from our hook, our custom hook. So we know we're connected. So if we look at our custom hook, we're returning null, null, false. If you don't believe me, I could obviously rename this 1, 2, 3. So this state is coming from our custom hook. So if I save it and I switch back in the browser here, you guys are going to see 1, 2, 3. Hey, it works. Great job. So let's go back. Let's change the names back to how we had them originally, because that's what we want. So now we're ready to start adding our use effect. And use effect is where we should put anything that creates a side effect in React. So if it has a side effect, you want to put it in use effect. And fetch is one of those things. Use effect is a built-in hook in React, and it takes a callback function. And this is where we're going to put our logic here. Also, to make sure that we only want it to render once, we put a empty array here. You can learn more about different hooks in the React website, because if I explain everything and keep explaining everything, this is going to be a huge and long video. So I just want to get through this example, give you an overview, and give you something that you could do at home and something that you could use in your projects. So now what I'm going to do is, I know that we want to have a synchronous function. And because you're going to use async await, we are going to create a function called, you're going to put async in front of it, and we're going to call it get data. And we're going to call this function from our use effect. Okay, and so inside our sync function, we're going to do everything in try and catch blocks. So try, it's like try this, and if something happens, return an error. And this is where our error is going to go. We're going to console log the error here, just so we could see it if we get one, but we're also going to save it to state. Okay, so we have our try catch block. Now within that try catch block, we're going to set up our fetch. If you're not familiar with your fetch, it is super simple. And again, you could always do more reading. And I always suggest after you watch a video, after you watch a tutorial, you read some more. You know, as you get different perspectives from different people, it makes it much easier to understand. So we're going to set up our fetch. And because you're using async await, what we would do, we would have a constant that's response, and it awaits fetch, which is a JavaScript API to make request. And I know that we're going to pass an URL here, and that URL is going to come as a prop into our use fetch hook. So I'm going to put URL here. Okay. Now, once we return our result, we want to catch it. We want to create a variable named data or whatever you want to call it. And what we want to do is we want to take the response that we get and we want to convert it to JSON. This is just how fetch works, and you could always read more about it at your leisure convenience. All right, so now what we're doing here is basically we're using fetch. Once this promise is resolved, it's going to go into our response. Then we do response, which is also return a promise. Once that promise is resolved, it puts that information into data. And then we're going to do set results, which is our hook. And we're going to set it to the data that received. Now, I could tell you this is going to error out because we don't really have anything for URL that we're passing, which is great because we get to test our console log error. So let's go down here, and we're going to also set our error to error.message because that's what we get. We get an object and we want to just display the message, so we do .message. So now what we want to do is when this function runs, we want to set loading to true. Okay, so we could showcase some sort of loading. Once it either gets the data or fails and returns an error, we want to set loading to false because we want to display something. And we're going to handle it in a very easy way here for this example. So we're going to jump in back to our app.js, and we have access to is loading. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say if is loading, return, and we're just going to keep it simple. It's just going to be an h2 with loading. You could put a cool spinning loader. Whoa, where did I? Well, my screen disappeared for me, but I'm sure you guys could still see it. We're going to put loading here, dot, 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 dot. And once it loads, it's going to display this message. So let's save before we get too far, make sure we don't have any errors. And I have a feeling we might. Refresh our browser. And let me jump back to a browser here. Okay, as you could see, if I refresh quickly, you see loading flash, and as soon as it loads, it disappears because it throws an error. And as you could see, this is the error that we are returning, error from fetch. This is what we wrote in our console log.error in position 2. So something is wrong, and what's wrong is that we didn't provide a URL where to go to get the data. But before we provide that, let's go back to our code and let's handle the error so at least our viewers could see what's up. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go here, and we're going to use one of the ways which you could do conditional rendering, and this is a really good one. There's a bunch of ways of doing this. For today's class, we're going to do this way. So we're going to say if error and display error, and we're going to do a p tag, just why not, and we're going to put error, and inside here we're going to put error, which is our error that we're getting from our custom hook. So the way this works, if this is true, then it's going to show this. If this is false, it's not going to show this. And this is an easy and concise way of being able to display. So let's save it, see if it works. Maybe it won't work. Maybe I'm making stuff up and I don't know what I'm talking about, which is true. Sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm still learning, just like you guys. So here you go. Error, unexpected token in JSON. That's our error message. Is it the best error message we could show? Not really, but at least you could see in this example. Wow, I didn't switch my screen to show you. So as we refresh here, it goes loading, and then it shows our error, unexpected token in JSON. Is this the best message to show? Not really, there's much better ways, but the most important lesson here is that we know that we expect errors and we want to be able to display those errors to our user if something goes wrong. So now we're going to switch back, and what we're going to do is we're going to pass a URL, and we're going to pass our URL as a prop to our useFetch hook. So our URL is going to go here, and we're going to hardcode a URL here. I'm going to paste it in here. This is a cool URL that gets all the popular articles in Hacker News. And let me just grab that URL here off screen here. Silence. You know, like it's like, should I do this as ASMR channel? Where I'm like, oh guys, what are you guys doing? Okay. Scratch the mic. Those are ridiculous. I mean, like I fall for it too. I saw a dog eating dog food. It's like, and I'm like, wow, this is like amazing. So I could see the, you know, the kind of like why people do it and enjoy it. But I'll stick to coding because obviously you want to get better at coding. I want to get better at teaching, and I also want to get better at coding. So this is a win-win for everybody. So I'm hoping it's win-win for everybody. Hey, by the way, if you enjoy what I do here on this channel, definitely share the likes, share the love, subscribe. The more people, the more you like the channel, or the more people like the channel, the more people will get to see my content. So let's save this. And so now we should, and what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do this here before we jump into the other screen. I'm going to say if results, or result I should say, then show result. And what we're going to do for now, we're just going to do a placeholder P here, and it's going to be data will show here. Now this message only going to show if there's data. So if you don't see this message, then something went wrong with our API call. Okay, I always like to make the screen bigger, but this is fine. I could always close this because we don't need that. Give us some more real estate here. All right, guys, so let's jump back to the browser, see what happened. Maybe the browser called me error. So unexpected token in JSON. Well, let's refresh it. Okay, loading, data will show here, right? So I had to refresh my browser. So what happens again when I click refresh? It's loading. North-south loading takes a little bit longer. Why? Because my internet's slow. It's going somewhere. It's going to receive the data. And once it receives the data, the loading will disappear. That took forever, but data will show here. And I know we have data because we did console log it. We have this console log that we did at the beginning, results. So if we go into our console log in our browser here, boom, here we see our result. We're returning 10 items, and we want to display those items. So what do we need to display? So we have an ID, and we're just going to display the title. Okay, here we go. Let's jump back into that. We're almost done, guys. You guys doing great. Really appreciate you guys sticking along, learning some React with me, helping me to become a better teacher, and most importantly, having fun. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Again, I always read my comments and I always reply. So definitely, if you have a question, let me know. And when I do these lives, obviously you'll be able to do this in chat. So let's jump back to our code here. And so this is so far looking great. We're doing good. Obviously, there's 1,000 different ways to do things, but this is just a basic example. Now, we wanted to display data here. So how are we going to display our data here? Well, we are going to basically map through our results and I'm always doing it backwards. It's result actually, dot map, and we're going to return back an item, and we're going to do it super simple here. We're going to just do a div, and that div is going to have our data. We're going to do it as an H2 for the title. So we're going to type item.title. And then underneath, we're going to put a little HR tag to put a little line. We don't need it, but why not? Okay, something somewhere complaining about. What's the complaint here? Let's save this. See what happens. There's an error. Let me look at the error. I'm doing something wrong, but it's good to see these errors, to see what is happening, what is going on. So let's take a look here. So it says syntax error, expected, comma. Okay, that is very interesting and exciting to me, and I know why this is happening, because we're already within the brackets here. Let me go back and I'll show you what I mean. So since we are already inside the brackets, I don't have to do double brackets, otherwise it thinks it's an object. That's why expecting a comma. So this is going to solve your issue. Now if I control save again, go back and refresh my browser, now we don't have any issues, and bam, we have our data. So again, if I refresh, we have loading, and then after everything loads, we see our data. This is great. So the final, oh my God, we have another error. Warning, each child in a list should have a unique key. And that is true. React, when you have a list of items, and usually the way React's, whenever you make a change in an item, it's only going to change that item. So React kind of has to know what item it's working on. So the way you fix it is a very simple fix. Let's jump back into the code here. So the way you fix it, on this object, this div that we're returning, we would just add a key prop, and that key prop will be item.id. And now if we save and jump back into our code, look, no error, everything looks good. We're doing fantastic. You guys are doing fantastic. So finally, the final step here, and everything works, there's no error. And the way this app is kind of set up, I'm not sure how to show you this, but if this app unmounts, then we're gonna, like in the middle of when it's trying to make the fetch request, is gonna error out. Something's gonna go wrong. So what we want to do is we want to have a way to abort the request when we unmount the component or something along those lines. So let's jump back. Oh man, I'm talking all this stuff and you guys are not seeing the screen of the data loading. So let me switch here. Sorry about that, guys. Still getting the hang of it here. But anyway, so look, everything works. If I refresh, boom, loading, internet slow, but here's our data. And like I was saying before, right now there's no errors, but if this component were to unmount and we were to break the process or disturb the process when it's fetching, it would error out. So what we want to do is we want to have a way of canceling the request. And this is where abort controller comes in. Again, you could read more about it. Just Google it or check out the React docs. But what we're going to do, we're going to implement it here. And you could always learn more by searching and reading about it. But I just want to introduce it here because most people don't do this. And this is, like I mentioned before, we had an error at work. And this is what we need to do to fix it. So let me just jump back here one more time to show you quickly the article that this is based on. So we go to, one second here. I need a second monitor, you know. Second monitor would be nice. It would make a lot of difference here. So here we go. So if we go to our articles that we had before, and here we show, okay, blah, 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 handling fetch errors, canceling fetch requests. Unfortunately, Fetch API does not allow you to cancel a fetch request once started. So to cancel fetch requests, you need a tool called abort controller, and that's what you're doing. By the way, if you're using Axios, and those of you who are familiar with Axios, it has something that you could use with Axios to cancel. And the basic idea here, we want to initialize our abort controller, and we want to pass that to our fetch, and then if we want to cancel, we will basically run controller abort. And the way it works in a use effect, we would do it in our, at the end, we would return what they call the cleanup function. And I'm going to show you that in just a second. So let's jump back into the code. Here we are. And what we're going to do first is we're going to, of course, create an instance of our abort controller. And the way we're going to do that is super easy. Inside our use effect, where's our use effect here? Oh wait, I gotta go into our awesome hook. And so here we are, we're inside our use effect. We're going to create our abort controller here. We're gonna set it up as a const, and we're gonna call it controller. And it's gonna be equals to new abort controller. Also, just to make our lives easier, we're going to create a variable called signal, and it's going to be an object. And this is what we're going to pass as a second argument to our fetch. Controller, again, I'm sorry that I typed so slow, dot signal. All right, so that's all set. So all we have to do is now pass it to our fetch response here, a signal. Okay, so now that's all set. So how does useEffect know to call abort controller, or when should it abort controller? Well, this is where the cleanup function comes up. So right here, after calling our get data, the last thing, we're going to return a function. And this is our cleanup function in our React, inside our useEffect. And what we're going to do, we're going to call our abort controller here, controller dot abort. And that's it. And here you have it. And so if we save everything and jump back to our browser, man, I just looked and I wasn't sure if I was in the browser, and you might have missed all the important stuff. So let me jump back. You guys probably were like, if this is a repeat, it's okay, it's a repeat, it's good review. So basically what we did, we create a constant controller and we call, using that method, new abort controller. We created a variable signal, basically an object which is going to have a signal, which is control signal, and this is how we pass it to our fetch API here. And again, if I didn't switch the screen before, I apologize. Hopefully you could see it here. So basically we pass our signal into our fetch as a second argument, and then at the bottom here, in our return statement, we create our cleanup function. And basically what this does is going to call controller and abort. And anytime this unmounts, this is the last thing that the useEffect fires, is this return, which calls this function. We will abort our controller and we will not have any errors. So let's jump into our browser here and take a look here. Yeah, and so here we go. So everything still works. There's no errors here. Boom. Beautiful. And again, things take a while to load because my internet is slow. So once this loads, you guys are going to see all the data that we have. Boom, here it is. So here you are. We create a custom hook. So let's jump into our code editor again and do a quick review. Okay, guys. So first thing we did is we created our use fetch hook. Very important, anytime you're making custom hooks, you started with the name use. We set up all of our local state. We created our use effect, which is where we want to handle all our fetch requests because it's something that introduces side effect to our app, and this is where we want to do it. We started by setting up our async function, which basically handles getting the data, and we were setting that data to our state. If we had an error, we would set that error to our state. If it's loading or not loading, we were setting it to our local state, and we were returning all those things via the return statement. In our app.js, when we were using our hook, we had access to all those items that we were returning, and that's why we were able to get our results that we were able to map through here. Again, if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments below and I will answer them, plain and simple. And the last thing we did, and a lot of people don't show this detail, and I know this is important because we did have an issue at work, and this is something we had to do to fix it. So is using the board controller tool. You could read the article that I showed before, and basically we created a new instance of our board controller. We create an object with signal that we pass to our fetch, and so now, and we created our cleanup function. So now whenever our component dismounts, this return will be called and controller abort will be called in consequence of that. So anyway, that's all we have for today. I want to thank you guys for your time. Again, if you guys enjoy coffee, enjoying code, I think it's going to be a lot of fun with these cool live streams and screencast, and I want to do more of these formats because I definitely want to engage with you guys, and I want to practice teaching more. By teaching more, I learn more, so it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win for you because I get to teach you things maybe you know, maybe you don't know, give you a different perspective, different explanation, and it's a win for me because I get to practice teaching. So with that being said, I just want to say thank you guys so much for the support on this channel. I'm basically some dude who just decided to learn to code way late into his 30s. I started when I was 35. Took me 5 years to get my job. Now I had other jobs, but I do count them. I count them. But like I I started with WordPress. I moved to PHP and WordPress, and then I had some internships. But because I had a nice job that I enjoyed, I didn't really have enough incentive to kind of quit because I was making good money. And I don't recommend you quit your day job, but I was not taking coding seriously. So if you take coding seriously and programming, you come up with a consistent schedule, you practice, you learn, you could accomplish these goals way faster than it took me. But, I'm a slow starter, learner, everything. But I'm glad that I'm here. It's totally worthwhile, especially with this pandemic going on. The ability to work from anywhere, the idea of that you're learning a skill that's in demand is super important. So keep up your studying. Again, thank you so much. If you like what I do on this channel, subscribe. And if you want to make this content visible to others, definitely smash that like button. That's what all the young kids say these days. Smash the like button, yeah. I mean, is that what I have to do to get you guys like my videos? I mean, seriously. Anyway, enough of that. Thanks. I'll see you guys next time.